Hi, thanks for tuning in. I have a correction to start with from my last episode. Um, I didn't mention Cassius Clay. I said Muhammad Ali, and his name didn't change until later. I believe it was probably in the 70s when he changed his name and became a Muslim. But we were big fans, me and my grandma, when I was little. So this is my story, 1964, thereabouts. When I was about 10 years old, 11, 10. But I'm going to go back and talk about my dad a little more. My dad was the alcoholic soldier, CIA. When I was little, um, he, he never hit me ever in my whole life, okay? He never raised his voice, barely ever. My mom yelled and screamed at him a lot. But he kept his cool. He didn't cuss. The only thing I ever heard him say was "hell's bells." That's the way he cursed. And one time when I was in the crib till I was 5 years old, I mouthed off about something, and he got mad at me. That's the only time I remember him being angry like that. And he picked me up under my arms, and he shook me. And he said, "Susie, don't you ever say that again." And believe me, I didn't. I was scared shitless. and but that's the angriest I ever saw him at me. And I gave him a lot of reason to be angry later on when I was a teenager, when he was retired, and I was in my late teens. I was a bad girl. And he always kept his cool. My mom would yell at him about drinking, and he would say, "Martha, I was drunk when I met you. I was drunk when I married you." And he used to also say that he wanted to die with a cigarette in one hand and a Jack Daniels in the other, and he'd be happy. He would say that would be a successful life to me. So, he didn't get to do that. By the time he was gone, he wasn't able to do either one, I don't think. So, my dad was a procrastinator. He wrote me a letter. Well, let me say this. He started getting transferred away from us when I was probably about 6 or 7. And first place I remember him going was Oakdale, Pennsylvania. And my mom and I drove out there. It was quite a drive. It's like around Pittsburgh. I think it was right past Pittsburgh. It was like 11 hours, if I recall correctly. And the first night we went out there, my mom and dad hadn't been together in months, and we were in a motel room. They thought I was sleeping, but I heard them having sex, and I woke up and I saw them, and it was like traumatic for me. I didn't know if what they were doing was normal or what. It was just something that I still see. I can still see it in my head. Not something that kids should have to see. But they thought I was sleeping. But they were not. They were very passionate because they hadn't seen each other in months, and they weren't like being discreet at all. So my dad, and that's when he was at Oakdale, is when he took me to his office, the one and only time. I remember I got real bad hay fever and he had to take me to the doctor. First time I got diagnosed with the hay fever. And then he took me to his office for a minute, and there was all this top secret gates and signs and classified top secret all over the place. And that's when he first started working for CIA. That's when the first CIA was actually first starting. So my dad went to Alaska after that. He got transferred to Fairbanks, Alaska, and he procrastinated and wrote me a letter because he hardly ever wrote to me, very rarely. And he wrote this big long letter. It was like an essay on procrastination, and I didn't even know what the word meant. I had to look it up, and it was very strange because I was so young, couldn't appreciate it. If I was a teenager, I might have appreciated a letter like that, but I couldn't appreciate that. It was just very strange to me. He always talked down to me. He was so darn smart. He had he was a genius. He had an extremely high IQ, and he always talked down to me. So it was hard for me to understand everything he was trying to say, because there was always a vocabulary thing. He's always using these big words that I never heard of. I remember just thinking, why can't he just talk like normal dads talk to their kids, you know? He talked to me like I was in college or something when I was a little kid. I remember when I had the measles, he went to the library and got this great big book of Greek mythology. I was in the first grade at 6 years old when I had the measles, and he had this big Greek mythology book with the illustrated in color, beautiful drawings, and I really loved those stories. And it's funny to me because no one in my family ever read me the typical fairy tales, all those. They gave me books that had them. I could read them myself, but they never read them to me. Nobody read me those. My grandfather read me the Bible. He told me the Bible stories, but nobody else read to me. My mom couldn't read. My grandmother never read to me. I don't know why, but my dad would read me these Greek. That's the only memory I have of any of them reading to me, and it was awesome. I just really loved them, so when my friends were getting those typical fairy tales, I was getting Greek mythology, which was way above that level, but I dug it. So that's how my dad treated me, like I was as smart as him, right? So then in the Alaska, he did some leather work. He made purses for my mom and I with our names on them. I wish I still had that. And he sent me a rabbit fur parka with a raccoon collar. It was beautiful, like the real Eskimos wear. And I heard many years later, my brother told me, my dad never told me, but my brother told me a story about something that happened to him in Alaska. He was a sergeant. He had a platoon, or whatever you call it, of men under him. And he was up for promotion at that time. I even remember that. I remember my mom telling me that he was about to get promoted to E7, and all excited about becoming a master sergeant. And he went AWOL with his troops. They were gone for I don't know how long, days at least. And when he came back, he said that they got lost because of the blizzard. Well, it was determined that he just took them on a drunk binge, and he got de-striped when he was about to get a promotion. I remember when that happened. I didn't know the AWOL part until years later. So my parents never once took us on vacation. Never had a vacation with my dad. However, my mom, she did take me to Washington, D.C. to visit a friend of hers who was also Japanese. Her husband was a soldier, and they were living in Arlington, Virginia, where he was stationed. And we went to D.C. So I got to see the sights in D.C. I was about 10 years old. I was big enough to appreciate it. I have a little memory of that. And that was really cool. Mount Vernon and this, the Lincoln Memorial, all that stuff. Didn't get to go inside the Capitol or the White House, but we saw them from the outside. But the thing that stood out in my mind to this day, what impressed me the most, was the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, the changing of the guard at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. That was very moving, very impressive. Everyone should go see that. I haven't been. I did get to go again later when I was about 15, 16. I went with a girlfriend whose sister was working in D.C. And so I got to see all those things again, and that's helped with my memory a lot. And I really regret that I never got to bring my kids there. And if any of you haven't been to our nation's capital, you should go. You should go. I didn't get to see the Vietnam Memorial because that wasn't there yet. But you should go. Okay, World's Fair. That is the other place I remember my mom bringing me. Now that was a year later or 2 years later. The DC trip was before 5th grade, and the World's Fair trip was after 6th grade. So the World's Fair was cool. It was in New York, in Queens, and we took a subway for the very first time in my life that I rode a subway, which was awesome, and it was packed. It was just so exciting. I loved an adventure. I still do, but I remember I had to hang on the ceiling thing, and it was just shoulder to shoulder packed with people. And the World's Fair was cool, the 1964 World's Fair, and it was like going to Disneyland, basically. It was fun. I had a little bit of memories, not too much. Small world. It's a small world. That's where that came from. It's a small world after all. Yeah. So that was all cool. And now I wanted to mention the Joy Luck Club. If you guys have seen that movie, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, I wish you would. If you enjoy my story, you would enjoy that because I could relate very well. Joy Luck Club was about 4 Chinese women who had daughters that were half American, half Chinese. They played mahjong. Well, my mom had friends that were that had daughters like me who were half Japanese and half American, and they played cards on a regular basis. These women would get together, talk Japanese, laugh, and carry on, have a ball. I broke out with my Japanese cards to show you. They're pretty cool. No numbers, just pictures. Each picture has a value. So played with them, have a good time with the other daughters, and their stories were similar to Joy Luck Club. I'm going to tell you what I know about my mom is not too much. She had 3 sisters and a young brother. Her mother died in childbirth, and so my mom lost her mom when she was 6 years old. And her dad cared for them. I heard that they were pretty well off, that they had a maid, a housekeeper or nanny or something. And then when the war came, they lived in Yokohama. And when the war came, their dad sent them to live in the country with their aunt because it was safer away from the city. So she was out there during the war, and she was in her teens, like working in the rice paddies, I think. I have a picture of her, looked like she was in the rice paddy up to her knees. So don't know much else, but she had a sad life. Obviously, her mom dying at age 6, the war happening. So that's stuff is in the Joy Luck Club, but it's relating to China and a different war. But those people went through a lot. It's sad. And like I say, the war was not their fault, That's the government. It's not the people, and they suffered a lot. I actually have a disease, and part of it might be related to the part of what's wrong with me. That I had one doctor tell me that this is mostly seen in the survivors of the atom bomb, their children are getting stomach cancer. I was told this 5 years ago or so, 7, 8 years ago, when I was diagnosed with precancer in my whole stomach. And they said that it's only happening in these Japanese blood descendants, and that the radiation lingered in the reproductive organs. And my mom was 17 when the bomb happened. So she was probably, even though she wasn't close to it, she probably got some radiation from it. And it went on to me and gave me a propensity for this almost cancer that I had. I wasn't going to talk about my health today, but I just had my colonoscopy and endoscopy yesterday. So I guess it's appropriate here. I wasn't planning to take this U-turn. But anyway, I had it. I was diagnosed with atrophic gastritis, which basically means I didn't have a stomach. My stomach wasn't working anymore. Biopsy showed all precancer cells. Tissue does not resemble stomach lining. That's what I was told 8 years ago. And since then I got the stem cells. I had IV transfusions of stem cells from placentas of newborn baby, and that helped me. It completely healed my stomach, completely. After when I went back 2 years later, doctor said they would probably start me on chemo because it would probably be cancer by then, and start me on chemo and stuff, radiation. But I went back 2 years later and I was healed. Now, I believe in prayer. I believe definitely in miracles. But I did get the stem cells during that time period, and the stem cells also healed my arthritis pain. So, and the doctor acknowledged, she said it was probably stem cells, Then I went back again yesterday. It's been over 4 years since then, and it's back. Same bad tissue all through my stomach, and it's in my esophagus now too. This chronic atrophy, gastritis, atrophic gastritis. So I need to get more stem cells because obviously they're wearing off. So I mean, it'll take me my half of my savings that's left, or I can go to down to Guadalajara, place I know about down there that will do it a lot cheaper, but all the expense of making the trip and all that, and but that's probably what I'm going to do because I can get more stem cells for less money there. Got to get my passport first. So, I didn't plan to do all that. Now, what time is it? I think I used up my time, not as I intended, but it's enough for now. Maybe real quick, just in case you want, or you can tune out now, but just in case you want, I'm going to just name some of these other old black and white TV shows that I jotted down that I was remembering that I liked a lot, which was Mr. Ed, The Talking Horse, Andy Griffith, Opie Was My Age, so he was a favorite. My Favorite Martian, Addams Family, The Munsters, The Flintstones came out around then. The other shows I remember that were more for adults, but I used to watch them a lot and I liked them, was Amos and Andy, The Honeymooners, I Love Lucy, Jack Benny. There were a lot of good ones. So those were some of my favorites, and I will see you again soon. Take care.